It's easy to think that happiness is the ultimate goal we should strive for, isn't it? But Jordan Peterson has a slightly different take. He argues that suffering is a fundamental part of life, as if it's built into the way the world works.
Right? And he's pretty clear about where that leaves us. His point is, when suffering feels unbearable, we've got a choice. Either we let it consume us, retreating into despair, or we face it, head on, and try to rise above it. Not easy, is it?
Not at all. But he believes there's something much deeper than happiness to aim for. Meaning. Seeking meaning, he says, gives us the strength to navigate life's chaos and endure its inevitable hardships.
Exactly. And this idea of finding meaning ties beautifully into the first rule of his book. Stand up straight with your shoulders back. Now, that's not just about posture, but, it's a metaphor. When you puff up your chest and hold your head high, it's like you're telling the world that you're ready to face whatever comes your way. It's a stance of confidence, of responsibility.
And it's such a relatable idea, isn't it? The way he links that simple act, standing up straight, to the broader challenge of accepting responsibility for your life. It's empowering. But what's fascinating is how these rules originated. Did you know they stemmed from his responses to questions on Quora?
Yes, where someone asked, "What are the most valuable things everyone should know?" And from that, he came up with 42 rules originally. I mean, can you imagine distilling life advice down like that? Of course, those 42 rules evolved into a more focused 12 when the book came about.
And what's brilliant about these rules is how universal they feel. Sure, they're based on his personal insights, but they resonate with people everywhere. I think that's why his book has sold, what was it, over 10 million copies now?
That's right. It's fascinating how it struck a chord across so many cultures. Whether you agree with Peterson or not, his emphasis on personal responsibility, on resilience, it's obviously a message that people are hungry for.
Absolutely, and I think it speaks to this moment we're in. People are looking for clarity, for ways to navigate a world that can feel, well, overwhelming. And Peterson taps into that with these rules.
And speaking of how these rules resonate universally, let's look at one that feels particularly personal. Rule 2. Treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. Honestly, it's such a simple idea, but when you think about it deeply, it's pretty profound, right?
It is. I mean, imagine this. You'd probably go out of your way to help a friend or a loved one if they were struggling, wouldn't you? Making sure they're eating properly, getting enough rest, even encouraging them when they're down. But how often do we apply that same level of care to ourselves?
Exactly. And Peterson's point is that we should step back and, take ourselves seriously. If you're responsible for your own well-being, your own potential, then it's not just kindness. It's self-respect.
Right, and that mindset can be transformative for people. There's this idea of cultivating self-worth, not in a fluffy, feel-good way, but by recognising the value of your existence. It's actually quite practical when you frame it like that.
And it's something you can really see playing out. I read about someone who started implementing this rule after reading the book. Instead of pushing themselves to the brink, they began prioritising things like a balanced routine, exercise, proper meals, an actual sleep schedule. It sounds basic, but for them, it was life-changing.
It's remarkable how much small, intentional actions can shift someone's whole perspective on life. But, this is also where some critics come in, don't they?
Oh, definitely. One critique I've seen is that Peterson's rules can feel, overly simplified. It's like, sure, treat yourself better. But they argue there's more to it than just saying it. The deeper structural issues, society, economics, that affect people's ability to do these things aren't always addressed.
True, but at the same time, there's value in starting with what's within your control. That's kind of his whole point, isn't it? Focus on where you can make a difference, even if it's just in your immediate circumstances. Though there's definitely been backlash when it comes to some of his other philosophies, particularly on gender and culture.
Yeah, he's been called controversial for his views on societal norms, especially regarding young men. This is where I think the cultural context of the book becomes so important. A lot of what he's saying seems to resonate with young men navigating today's pressures. The expectations to be successful, to be confident, to sort of have it all figured out.
And you can see why that strikes a chord. For many, these rules offer a kind of clarity or even reassurance when things feel chaotic. It's not just about self-help. It's about finding a framework that works in a world that, let's face it, often feels overwhelming.
Absolutely. It's not without its flaws, but for a lot of people, the message of responsibility and meaning is one that sticks. And that's the power of Peterson's 12 rules. There's a universality to them. Something in there connects with people across all walks of life.
That universality we just talked about, it's rooted in one of Peterson's central ideas, the interplay of chaos and order. He unpacks this dynamic by drawing on mythology and religion, describing how these two forces shape not just our lives, but the very rules we live by. It's about finding that balance where life can thrive.
Right, and he uses these incredible stories to illustrate it, doesn't he? I mean, take the biblical story of Adam and Eve. It's not just a tale about temptation. For Peterson, it's a way to show how knowledge and responsibility emerge when you step out of the chaos. It's fascinating.
Totally. And he doesn't stop at ancient tales. He connects it to modern psychology too, like that invisible gorilla test he mentions. The idea that what we perceive depends on what we're aiming for. It's so profound when you think about it in terms of finding order in our chaotic lives.
But then, he doesn't just theorize. He gets practical about it, doesn't he? Like during his 2018 world tour, he met tens of thousands of people, and their reactions, some cheering, some crying, really showed how deeply these rules resonate. What's more fascinating is how personal responsibility became a centerpiece of those conversations.
And there's always this sense of hope in everything he says too. I remember reading about these folks who came up to him after those talks saying how just one rule, maybe rule one about standing tall, helped them regain a sense of control in their lives. It's powerful, isn't it?
It is. But let's bring it to today. Does it hold up in a world that's changing so quickly? You've got social media, this constant flood of information. I'd argue the rules are more relevant now than ever, but they might need adapting. Take Rule 7. Pursue what is meaningful. What does that even mean for someone juggling a job, relationships, and, doom scrolling Twitter at midnight?
Great point. And I think that's where his message really comes alive. Finding meaning isn't about some grand, unreachable goal. It's about taking small, deliberate steps. I read about this woman who started applying his ideas. She focused on simplifying her life, identifying what mattered, and, get this, logging off from social media for an hour a day. That one change completely reframed her experience of the world.
So it's not revolutionary. It's just profoundly practical. But even with all the praise, Peterson remains controversial. Some critics argue he oversimplifies things, or that his ideas on gender or society are, divisive. Do you think that overshadows the message?
I don't think it does for most. Beyond the debates, it's about the core idea. Life is chaotic, but within that chaos we have the ability, maybe even the responsibility, to create order. That's the takeaway for me anyway. And honestly, some people just seem to need that message right now.
Exactly. Whatever you make of Peterson's views, his focus on resilience, responsibility, and personal meaning has clearly helped millions navigate their own chaos. And that's what makes him, and this book, worth talking about.
Absolutely. And on that note, that brings us to the end of this journey through Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. Thanks for sticking with us as we explored it all. Chaos, order, and everything in between. Until next time.
Take care, and remember, find your meaning one step at a time.